All systems are go, and we'll get started with today's conversation in just a few seconds. All right, Steve Hopkins says, yep, I see a lot of thumbs up. If you have the new version of Zoom, there's a few new emojis that you can use for reactions other than the thumbs up or the clapping hand. If you have the... All right, great. All systems go from Thornton. Everybody sounds like they're ready to get started today. Fantastic. Well, I want to welcome you to One Quick Thing. I'm Scott Kirzner, CEO and co-founder of Innovation Leader.
And I'm Caitlin Milliken, IL's multimedia editor, and we're so glad that you could join us for today's episode of One Quick Thing.
So a quick overview of Innovation Leader before we introduce our featured guest for today. At Innovation Leader, we've created the world's biggest network of people who work inside big organizations on innovation-related issues, and we produce content, research, and gatherings like this one to help them learn from their peers and deliver more impact in their organizations.
And One Quick Thing is a chance to connect with a group of innovators from around the world. We'll get the conversation going for the first 15 minutes, and then we'll give you 15 minutes to ask questions of your own.
We should also give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's episode, PatSnap.
PatSnap is an AI solution that collects information from databases around the world, from Asia to Europe, Europe to the US, and everywhere in between, making IP and R&D insights accessible to everyone. PatSnap helps you make sense of the unknown, turn data into intelligence, and make the decisions that shape our world. You can find out more about them at patsnap.com.
All right. Thank you, Caitlin. So Caitlin will be keeping an eye on the chat stream over the course of the show. So if you have questions, advice, or comments, feel free to chat away and we'll try our best to weave those in. And if you want to jump in via video in the second half of the meeting, you can let us know that in the chat as well. Really excited to have Mariya Filipova, VP of Innovation at Anthem, as our guest today. Anthem, as you may know, is the biggest for-profit managed healthcare company in the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. They're number 33 on the Fortune 500 list, and they have approximately 42 million members. Mariya leads Anthem's innovation function and oversees a network of ecosystem hubs across the country. She also leads a portfolio of initiatives that accelerate Anthem's transformation into an AI-first company. Mariya's past experience as an entrepreneur and Wall Street analyst has shaped how she thinks about transformation in highly regulated industries. And she previously led the Future of Work program office at Deloitte. So with all of that said, Mariya, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here, Scott.
So let's start off and just talk a little bit about innovation at Anthem, sort of like how it's defined and maybe where you sit in the organization.
Great question. Innovation at Anthem is defined as an enabler to accelerate our transformation to what you described as an AI-first enterprise. What that means is, as we are all familiar, innovation is somewhat of an overused word, and we very quickly identified innovation as a mindset rather than a function within the organization. So what my role is to continue to accelerate and enable the work of all the other teams within our digital organization and continue to cultivate that mindset of innovation within the organization. We define our mandate across a portfolio of both transformational work and also core and adjacent work. In a snapshot, we enable our massive transformative purpose, if you will, as a digital organization, which is to simplify healthcare by making it predictive, proactive.
I'll draw that blanket later.
All right, let's make sure, hang on, since there's always a little bit of background noise on, let's see, we'll mute everybody and then we'll just unmute the important people for now. So I guess one quick follow-up is you use the words adjacent, incremental, adjacent, and transformational. So like the 3 horizons or 3 buckets that lots of people talk about. Like, what's the rough breakdown? Like when you think about your time and your team's time, like how does it break down across those 3 horizons in 2020?
It's a great question, and it changes. I think part of my role is to be able to connect how the transformational work enables the core business of today and some of the incremental opportunities we see ahead of us. In my experience, if we have clear demarcation lines and we do incremental efforts without a line of sight towards what is the transformational change that's happening at an industry level or an organizational level, these incremental efforts have a very short shelf life. And so we do design core and incremental work with an eye towards what's coming around the corner. I would say probably about 60 to 70% of the work overall that is considered innovation work at Anthem is in that incremental space. And then there's some pretty significant bets, bold visions that we have taken on in that transformation space for about 30 to 40% of our portfolio.
I said it in the intro, but like you talk about turning Anthem into an AI first organization, like make that concrete for us. Like, what does that mean to be an AI first organization? I feel like AI was, it was definitely the buzzword of 2018 and 2019. Lots of people were using it. And I think in a lot of those applications, it really just meant slightly better software than we've had before, right? Not true AI.
That's right. Great question. For us, AI first enterprise means when we encounter a problem statement, be it operational or related to cost of care, the first tool that we take out of our toolkit is artificial intelligence, machine learning, or other technology related tools, rather than throwing people or money at the problem. AI first enterprise also for us means that we are a data-driven enterprise, and we are really looking to activate one of the most undervalued assets in healthcare, data. And we're also, AI first enterprise also means that we are creating capabilities around rapid experimentation, rapid insight generation using data sets, both data sets that we mine for insights in-house and certified, de-identified data sets that we have made available to the developer community outside of Anthem. It also means, as an AI first enterprise, it also means a change of mindset. The way we do our operations today is very different, and not everything needs to be developed in-house. We're partnering actively with the best and brightest out there to problem solve together.
Great. So in terms of that partnership, I'd love to segue into a question about this. You're doing kind of a challenge around COVID testing, and you have some interesting partners for that. And my understanding is that just launched in August or late July. So tell us about that COVID testing partnership.
July 28th is when Anthem, jointly with other 6 Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, partnered with the X Prize Foundation and Open COVID Screen, 2 nonprofits who are deeply involved in researching the COVID testing space, as well as organizing price competitions as a model to solve for systemic problems. And so we partnered with those 2 nonprofits, as well as some of the largest technology companies, and we put together a $5 million prize competition, where the intent is to come up with a solution that is affordable, less than $5 or less than the cost of a coffee, rapid with 12 hours or less turnaround time, easy to use, so saliva-based or not a nasopharyngeal swab. Those of us who have had to take those COVID tests, we know that they're not very pleasant. And also tests that are scalable. So these are the 4 criteria. The reason we are putting together the challenge is twofold. One, we believe that at this price point, this is what we really need to bring our communities back to school, back to work, back to life. And at this price point, we think that the marketplace needed additional incentive to innovate around that price point. And secondly, we're really designing this challenge with the intent to scale. And with that purpose, we've also set up a $50 million Apollo COVID project, where some of the most innovative VCs are partnering with us to fund additional work associated with the top finalists in this challenge. So very pleased to be part of that challenge, and the registration is open. So all of you who are working on rapid COVID testing solutions, please go to to xprize.org and rapid COVID testing.
I'd love to also ask, it seems like there's some questions already popping up in the chat. I'd love to ask in the chat, if you haven't had a COVID test yet, has that been because you haven't needed one, or you feel like they're too difficult to get right now? Mariya, I'm not sure if you're okay with the framing of that question, but we sometimes like to ask poll questions. I've been talking to some entrepreneurs here in the Boston area that are basically hypothesizing every company, as they go back to the office, would want to have some percentage of their employee base tested every week, right? And certainly if you could get down to the price point you're talking about, most people are saying in the audience that they haven't felt like they needed one, as opposed to access being a problem so far. I'd love to ask 1 or 2 last questions, Mariya, and then turn it over to the audience. I mean, one question is just about data sets. I mean, I can only imagine how much data Anthem has with 42 million members. And how do you think about, where are the high value data sets to mine, to apply AI to? And in some companies, I feel like it's about what are the easiest data sets to get to, frankly, like which are the ones that are in the most modern databases where you don't have to, pull a programmer out of retirement, to figure out how do we query this data set. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, great question. So I'll answer this in 2 parts. One, how we think about it internally, and how we, as I mentioned, we have taken a step to allow access to some of these valuable data sets to vetted partners from our ecosystem to access and mine one of the largest certified de-identified data sets out there today. So when we thought about creating the digital data sandbox, which is the mechanism through which we partner with ecosystem researchers or startups who want access to our data with a particular research question, we really started with with the security in mind. Privacy, security was non-negotiable. Luckily for us, there's advances in technology today that allow us to use different types of encryptions that allow us safe access to the data without the data moving or getting extracted from a safe environment that we have provisioned. Similarly, we ensure that the companies who are accessing the data have privacy and protection to the IP that they bring into those data sets. So that was the first starting point. I have to tell you, when we launched the data sandbox in 2018, it was it was still pretty impressive data set. But over the course of the last 2 years, we have increased the granularity of the data over 20 times. So we started with 100 data fields, and now we're at 2,000 data fields across labs, pharmacy, and claims data. Again, certified, de-identified claims data. That is over 20 billion claims across 14 years, which is approximately about 40 million unique lives. And the reason I'm sharing this is when you ask what are the data sets you look at this stage, we have gone down the path of exposing safely highest quality data over longitudinally. So the machine learning algorithms, the algorithms we train are at the quality that we would be able to compare them with the algorithms we have in-house. So our AI teams in Anthem are working on similar problems as the problems that we are posing out there as challenges to our ecosystem of developers. And we're looking to choose the best algorithms at play. So that's critical component. And I can't stress enough the importance of not only making data safely available, but also giving the developers resources to interpret and know what the data means. Healthcare data, unlike any other data sets, comes in with requires some interpretation and knowledge of the codes and other parts of the data that are embedded. So we've worked very closely to put together support teams and mentors to data dictionaries and other tools to interpret the data better.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing those really great answers to those questions, Mariya. We're going to turn it over to the interactive portion of the show. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask Mariya, please drop those in the chat window, or you can raise your hand in Zoom. If you'd like to be on camera, let us know. If you want us to ask your questions for you, that is also okay. Let us know. And while you're gathering all those questions, Scott is going to share a little bit more about our sponsor today.
All right. So PatSnap has a really amazing new offering that lets you get an overview of any company's innovation strategy instantly, whether they're a competitor, a potential partner, a startup, or an industry pioneer. PatSnap helps you track and monitor key technology and commercial investments, strategic focus areas, innovation strengths and weaknesses, and valuable patents. And you can check that out at connectedinnovation.io. Caitlin will share that URL in the chat. PatSnap is also going to be part of a demo showcase that we're organizing on September 17th, the Innovation Solutions Showcase, and we'll share the link for that in the chat as well. In case you'd like to sign up. And I know we have some questions already queued up in the chat there.
That's right. Thornton, if you're around, would you be able to unmute yourself or turn your camera on so we can hear from you?
I think I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted?
You sound great.
All right. Well, no, the question is like, I love the idea of AI first, and it is definitely, you know, the strategy moving forward. But the challenge is, for most organizations, truth be told, they're not really that good at data. I mean, it's sort of a growth area. I mean, even CIOs will admit, chief information officers will admit that, you know, we're good at applications and we're good at network and we're good at certain things, but like data is sort of tragically, it's sort of a new thing. So how do you do a forklift upgrade of the data competency of the entire organization, and thereby be able to get the advantage of these amazing tools that are out there, you know, floating around, just ready to be deployed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And fundamentally, AI and intelligence and our ability to get to predictive and proactive healthcare is predicated on our ability to have the right data that's connected, but also data that doesn't introduce additional bias. And so for us, that's an ongoing conversation. We as an enterprise do have a chief data officer. We are working very closely across our legal, privacy, and other teams to make sure, as I said, we're looking at best ways to access the data within the realm of its intended use, and also allow to take full advantage of edge learning, homomorphic encryption, and the other technologies that allow us to now put that data to good use. So 100% agree with you. I actually believe that we shouldn't only focus on data literacy for our data teams. We need to focus on data literacy for across all healthcare teams. Innovation team members have to go through basic boot camp on AI, data, the basics of how the traditional healthcare business model. So we are all cross-functional experts, irrespective of which function in healthcare you belong to.
Great. We had a question from Maggie a while back. Are you with us, Maggie, and able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mariya, for sharing all this great information. My question is maybe taking a step back, and I'm very curious around your success drivers at Anthem that are bringing, you know, the mindset shift, some of the terminology and the cultural tone that you're talking about, right? So what would you say is driving that at Anthem, and how much of it is, you know, executive leadership versus maybe grassroots? I'm just curious from your perspective.
I think, again, that's the crux of what innovators are looking to straddle, right? The top-down and grassroots approach. I think at Anthem and in any successful organization, it has to start at the top. When our CEO took on the role, Gail Boudreaux was very clear that Anthem's future is going to have a digital path towards it. So we invested heavily in building a digital organization. Over the last 2 years, that digital organization has become an integral part of all the parts of our Anthem organization, from product development to go-to-market strategies to overall strategy of the enterprise. So it starts at the top, and it starts with that kind of bold vision and mission. As I said, we have aligned around simplifying healthcare and making it predictive, proactive, and personalized. And that bold vision trickles down to all the other teams on the digital team and the other parts. So starting with that shared vision from the top. The other piece tactically that I could tell you from my innovation perspective, we do a lot of work in demystifying innovation and getting to the crux of what does innovation mean? Does it mean that we will help our business leaders get to their key KPIs faster, cheaper, or are we going to help them reframe what their role is? So in every conversation for me is an opportunity to distill innovation to the 5 principles that we believe it entails. It's first principle thinking. It's striving for exponential impact. So can we solve a problem that is going to drive 2x, 3x impact? And that would have a lasting effect rather than an effect for this quarter. Number 3, it's the entrepreneurial kind of scrappy mindset of what is the minimal thing that I could do, and how can I get this done if I was a hungry, well-funded startup? And how do I collaborate? We've expanded the notion of the teams going beyond just the realms of the folks who are immediately reporting to you. We'll look at the notion of a team as who are the right decision makers, influencers, or experts that I need to have on my side to get this result, to get this outcome. And so that's kind of embedding some of those principles. And irrespective if you sit on the data science team or if you sit in the AI team, these are the behaviors that we like to instill. I do want to tell you 2 things that where some of the pitfalls where typical, some of the less successful innovators I've seen trip up. One, you have to be able to create a strong, what I call immunity to innovation antibody immunity. And the best way to do that is think about, again, what can innovation do for that specific business person or business owner? So getting to the crux of what drives our business and what drives our ability to execute on that mission. And the second piece that I spend a lot of time thinking about is what is the what I call the innovation absorption rate that the organization have, right? So we could experiment and mine for algorithms as quickly as we can, but what is the ability for the organization to take those insights, algorithms, vetted startups, and embed them into the roadmap to the market? I know I threw a lot your way with this question, but you could tell that that's something that keeps me up at night.
Great. I want to get to 1 or 2 more quick questions before we kind of run out of time. Maureen wants to know how Anthem marries internal and external innovation. And she also asked about your CVC efforts at Anthem as well.
Great. So internal and external innovation is a fine balance. We typically look at we have the ethos of we look for the best solution in class and let the best solution win. So that's the approach we take when we evaluate algorithms that are sourced through our hackathons versus algorithms that are sourced through our internal, very well established AI capabilities. We also look at things that, again, going back to that absorption capacity or success rate. I'll give you an example. We make sure that any innovation initiative, pilot, or other study that we're running is from the very beginning has business owners associated with it. So when the KPIs of this study are met, we have a high confidence level that this solution or this study will continue in the organization. That was the approach we took with our accelerator program, the Fast Track to Scale program, where we took 5 startups, and over the course of 6 months, we were able to get 4 out of them and find a very tangible integration point and path to market within our platform. So that's how we take it. We're very focused on scaling and the so what, and we have an aversion to pilots for the sake of pilots.
Great, thank you so much for that answer. One more quick question. Patrick, if you're with us, can you unmute yourself and ask your question really briefly for Mariya?
Yes, I can. I appreciate it. Thanks. Hi, Mariya. I'm just curious about how the innovation process is working, because normally there's a huge culture change that has to occur, because you're going from a very fine-tuned, pretty process-focused process to where the line of success isn't exactly very I would say straight. It's not on a linear path. How are you handling the culture change, and how are the leaders, the business unit leaders, are they incentivized to adopt innovation, or how's that going for you?
Thanks for the softball question. Let's put it that way. No, this is a great question. Again, what we have found out is that the best conversations, innovation conversations, happen when innovation is not on the agenda. And so we start with a leader who is open-minded. That's all we ask for. And then from there, we go in the trenches with them and problem solve together. And so that's the premise. It is one conversation at a time, and one solution, one case study at a time. That's the grassroots component of the top line executive vision that we talked about earlier. You can't just say, here's the playbook and now be innovative, and from on every Tuesday from 3 to 4 we'll all be innovative, and the rest of it we're just going to do business as usual. That's the piece that I know on our side, the innovation team, they are brand ambassadors, they are change agents, they are storytellers, they are dot connectors, and that is their primary role, because we need to be able to show how this specific, and again, another example, one of the first companies that used our data sandbox back in 2018 was a company called CloudMedX. They took the sandbox and said, we don't have, let's just take it for a spin. 2 years later, they started a small study with us. They were integrated in some of our clinical programs, but now they're also part of our C19 Explorer, which is a COVID visualization tool of all the data that is coming up, so that decision makers in local communities can make decisions around opening their local businesses or the organizations there. And so what in that case is, we're now able to trace, again, abundance of examples like this, where we're able to trace the full cycle from discovery to validation to embedding in our roadmap to doing something that's been quite unprecedented really, with the X Prize example that we just gave.
Great, thanks.
Great, thank you so much for that answer. Unfortunately, we're just at that 30-minute mark. And we'll be moving into bonus time soon for those lingering extra questions. But for those of you who have to go right at 12:30, thanks for joining us. Scott has some announcements about the next few One Quick Thing meetings we have lined up. So I'll turn it over to Scott.
All right, yeah, if you have a hard stop, I just want to mention that our next One Quick Thing guests come from Swiss Re and the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Boy, if you think someone has an innovation challenge in 2020, how about running a major airport? You can sign up for both of those at innovationleader.com/onequickthing. Thanks again to PatSnap. Hope you all have a great day. If you need to drop off, and hope you can stick around for a few more extra minutes because there are still some good questions. And Mariya, thankfully, doesn't have a hard stop. So let's go back to, let's see. If you want to pick a question, Mariya, from the chat that you found interesting, I know we have Kristen from your team there who may have seen some interesting ones that flew by there. I mean, we talked a little bit about ecosystems. I know there were some questions around ecosystems and kind of engagement, with ecosystems around the US and around the world. I mean, I'm curious just what your thinking is about how that ecosystem engagement happens in a totally virtual world when you can't, go to an incubator or an accelerator demo day or easily meet with startups at, a South by Southwest type event.
That's perpetually the challenge. And I think we all have an opportunity to rethink what's important to us and how do we connect. I have to say that I personally am still working on being more present and not allowing virtual calls to fill up my entire day. So now more than ever, I would say it's important to connect virtually, but it's also important to make room for thoughtful reflection. So when you do connect, it's much more purposeful. I think when it comes to virtual connections, especially with startups, I think it's still some of those targeted conversations are very productive in virtual setting. Where I find it more challenging, and that's where we need to all of us be creative in solving that, is some of that unstructured thinking, right? The conversation between kind of informal networking and kind of discussions by the water cooler. So these informal, non-structured conversations are a little bit more difficult to happen in virtual setting. And so that's where I think what we're doing now is we're doing some much more office hours type conversations where we've got a smaller group of startups who are just asking us questions around what the solution is. We are doing webinars around exploring what Anthem does and frankly demystifying a little bit the healthcare system in the US. With our R&D office in Israel, we're going to be hosting an Anthem Live event in September for the ecosystem of startups in Israel who are interested in understanding the healthcare market there. So that's coming up. I think it takes an effort and it takes creativity, but it's also an opportunity to reflect on how we make these conversations more productive and more personal. So that's more to come. I could tell you that pretty much this is probably a preview. Later this week, we'll be announcing our Accelerator 2020 winning solutions. So stay tuned for that. And I know that Mass Challenge has scheduled a virtual finale. So we'll see how that goes. That would be one of the first challenges for the virtual connection there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let's see. We'll give the last question to Alex James. Alex, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, go ahead.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Mariya. Exciting to follow you guys with your Mass Challenge health tech efforts as well. Just to jump on to a question that Maureen and Cynthia had asked earlier around internal and external innovation. How many different levels of innovation do you have in terms of internal and external? And what are the differences in the KPIs in areas of impact between those? And how do you tie all of that data together to create actionable strategies?
So let me see if I can answer the question that you're asking. So when you say levels of innovation, are you asking, I'm assuming we're asking types of innovation versus teams. If we're talking about innovation teams, when I took on the role 2 years ago, my vision for innovation was and still is that innovation does not belong in a single team, in a single department, somewhere in the organization. Innovation needs to be diffused, and we need to create innovation change agents in different teams. So I lead the Anthem innovation team, which is basically the bulk of our innovation capabilities at Anthem. That said, we have innovation type champions and innovation smaller teams that exist in other parts of the organization that are focused on a specific market or is focused on a specific product that we have. They don't all feed into myself as an innovation leader, and that's perfectly okay because we are focusing on everybody instilling the same innovation mindset and principles rather than having the same reporting line. As I mentioned earlier, we define teams not by reporting structures, but by who needs to be part of that team to get the result done. I hope that's answering the question. In terms of the types of innovations and KPIs, my KPIs, we typically use a method by John Doerr called objectives and key results. I'm focusing and aligning my key results with the key results of other digital leaders and business partners. So it's my responsibility not only to deliver on my key results, but also make sure that my peers are delivering on their key results as well. So we have that collected, shared key results, performance indicators, and regular reporting on that. So there's kind of this coupling and Olympic circles model, if you will, that connects the different key results in different teams, mutually reinforcing each other.
Great, thank you.
Boy, the Olympic rings reference reminds me of the Olympics, which were supposed to be happening this summer, right, in Tokyo, but you're keeping the Olympic spirit alive, Mariya. Thanks for tackling all these questions. Kristen, thanks for sharing all of the links in the chat throughout. Those were fantastic. Alex, Patrick, Maureen, thanks everyone for your questions. I love that Maureen says she's going to get a tattoo of aversion to pilots for the sake of pilots. So you made an impression on Maureen.
You're starting a trend. That's right.
Her next tattoo, not her first tattoo, but her next tattoo. So thanks everyone for being here. I believe that our next one of these is not till post Labor Day, and it's with Jerry Gupta from Swiss Re. So you can sign up for anything that we do at innovationleader.com. One quick thing, it has its own webpage, which you'll see there on the homepage. But hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Thanks again to Mariya and your team for making this happen. Thanks, Caitlin, for helping co-host. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, guys.